Welcome to another edition of the Franchise Consultant Podcast. I'm so excited to have here Tony Vlahos from Execunet. Tony, how are you doing this morning?
Adam, I'm doing well. What about you?
Doing great. Doing great. Well, for our listeners that aren't familiar with Execunet, could you please tell them a little bit more about Execunet and yourself?
Yeah, Execunet has been the leading destination for senior level people who are facing job search and career changes for well over 30 years. And I am technically their chief marketing officer, which is a funny title to me because of the scope of what I do. So that includes being the head of the brand, and because we are a place for learning how to make changes happen, actually making them happen, I've taken on the role of VP of Learning as well. It's a big part of what we're about.
How many members of Execunet are there?
Well, we have 800,000 people in our sphere, and we have a large LinkedIn group known as the Executive Suite. I count them among our members because of how we treat them. We invite them to learn as well as we do our members in many cases, and so they're part of the family.
How does someone grow a group from 0 to 800,000 plus?
With some vision and hard work and word of mouth, I think is a term that I would use. We did start with 0. I remember coming to the company and we were spending some money on LinkedIn. And I thought, well, there's this thing called group happening. Why don't we build a group? And it just evolved from there. This is where the hard work part comes in. It is a matter of how you treat the group. And if you treat them with respect and respect who they are, at what level they are, and what they want to learn, not just from us, but from each other, you build an experience and an experience of value that helps people want to tell others that this is a place to be. And that's how we grew.
So who is the person that should join Execunet? And if they do join, what kind of benefits will they get out of joining the group?
Yeah, great question. So we are a place for the senior level executive, vice president and up mostly. Lots of chief executives and certainly a lot of people in the C-suite. It's someone who is at a crossroads. They have lost their job, or they fear change is coming, or they know it will be coming. That's mostly who we talk to. Many of our members are in role and don't have a need today to change, but they're thinking ahead. They're thinking about how long they've been doing what they're doing. In many cases, 30, 40 years, which is mind-blowing. And they know that they don't want to keep doing what they're doing for much longer. That's another audience camp. And so they come to us in confidence and with confidence to privately figure things out. At that level, you don't want to turn to your shareholders and say, I think I'm done, or necessarily to your peers or your reports and say, I've got a problem or I've got an issue. I'm not so sure about something. You're expected to know a whole lot at that level. And so you're not eager to betray that you don't know how to make a change, especially job search. The people we work with, Adam, are masters at something. Usually more than a couple of some things. They're not masters at making a change like that. That's our department. And so they work with us to learn how to make the changes they want.
That's great. That's great. And how did you get into this?
By accident. Like many things happen. I had no idea about Execunet when I was ready to make my change, 12 years ago. And I'll tell you a funny story. I had a call from a recruiter who was a recovering lawyer, and he knew me from my days at LexisNexis and said, there's this little company in Westchester, New York, which wasn't true. The Execunet's based in Connecticut. But he knew that if he told me Connecticut, I would never leave New York to work in Connecticut. So he used effective storytelling to get me to think about Execunet. And I thought, well, the role seems really exciting. I'd love to be the head of something. And so I made the leap. And through a series of grueling interviews with some lovely people, the transformation happened. I didn't look back, and I haven't, because of the culture we've created and the people I work with. And most important, the people we help. The mission of the brand hasn't changed. We've evolved as a brand with services and a story that is far more far-reaching than where we were when I started. But that's the most exciting part, to be able to reach people in large numbers in new ways.
So tell me about what you see in the career landscape right now, because this is unprecedented what we're seeing.
Yeah. Well, I see great opportunity. I see people struggling, which saddens me, but I know that with the right mindset or a different mindset, a lot of great change can happen. With a lot of hard work, not necessarily longer hours of search, great things can happen. I see a lot of jobs surging in a lot of sectors, the obvious places, including healthcare and home entertainment, but that's a myopic view of the market. I think the way to look at it is the companies that are now facing so much uncertainty and with so much up in the air, they're going to be looking for someone different when this is done. And as we emerge from this situation, they're going to be more open to leaders who have fresh ideas. And so that creates a lot of opportunity for people who have felt stuck in their old organizations. So that's what I see. And I believe the executives who are making changes for themselves are the ones who see it that way. And the ones who are stepping forward are the ones who are being considered. If you don't step forward in any condition, boom or bust cycle, no one ever sees you. So with that mindset, you can make a lot of things happen for yourself. And that's what we tell our audience, our members.
So what practical things can someone do throughout this time to make themselves more marketable for the world after what we're dealing with right now?
Well, it starts with defining what you want. And that means, where do I want to work? Right now, many of us don't have the luxury of choosing the geographic location, but in ideal times, that's one really great place to start. And then starting with the companies where you feel you want to work, where you could make a difference, where on the surface, it looks like a great fit for you based on their culture, their vision, their values, all those things. And then identifying ways that you can make a difference there. Whether there's an open position, public open position or not, doesn't matter as much. What matters more is, where do you see yourself fitting in and making great things happen for that company? And then you look at yourself and say, well, what's my story? What's the value that I can create for that organization? How do I help them see that about myself? Once you've identified your superpower, the value you can create, the difference you'll make, you can go to market and target the companies where you can make that difference felt. And then through a series of touches, including your network and all the marketing collateral around you, which includes your resume, your LinkedIn profile, other places people will experience you where you can demonstrate your impact and your reputation. That's how you go to market and help the right people see you for the difference maker you truly are.
So to switch gears here, you must be an amazing LinkedIn expert. What things do people need to do with their LinkedIn profile in order to let them to stand out?
A number of things. It has very much to do with your story, with the value story that we just talked about, where you're using your headline, your profile summary to paint a picture of yourself. And when you can back that up with data, as in your resume, and help people see that the story you're telling is proven, that's powerful. When people can look to your network of strong and weak ties and be able to experience you through them as well, that's awfully powerful. So I'm beginning to describe is a LinkedIn presence beyond the profile, where people can really see you and the difference you make. They can see it in the value you're sharing with others, where you're sharing your thought leadership, your expertise is being felt in different communities, be they groups or others. That's how your presence becomes more than just a brand statement. It becomes a fulfillment of a promise. And that's a very important part of being known for something and being felt. It's a demonstration of value. It's not just a statement of value.
So looking forward, you mentioned that people are going to be looking for people with different skill sets. How do you think that the office landscape will change in 10 or 20 years from now?
10 or 20 years, I don't know. We could be working on a planet. I have no idea. But I would say in the near term, at the very least, companies are getting creative. We all reacted to the pandemic. We are all reacting to a depressed market. The companies that are going to thrive are the ones that have a response to it, that are going to become creative as a result of it, and are using this moment in time to carve out a fresh frontier for their brand and for their community of followers. So remote work is going to be something that many of us embrace as the new normal. It doesn't mean we won't have satellite offices. It doesn't mean people can't meet in Starbucks. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't. We must, because we're human. We have to connect in as many ways as we possibly can. So companies will take that and make something of it that works for them. I don't believe there's any going back to exactly the way things were. Not because we can't, but because we probably shouldn't. There are a lot of things about the way things were that probably weren't so wonderful anyway. The point is, how do we seize this and take it and make something great from it?
Yes. So you mentioned about this potential change in the workplace that you see. Tell me a little bit more about what you see as the, sorry, I messed up here. I'm going to. So Tony, with so many executives leaving their organizations, what options do they have when they need help?
Yeah, great question. So many organizations are ill-equipped to help people at the senior levels. There is, of course, something known as outplacement, which many companies, not all, but many offer to all employees. And they work with outplacement firms to provide things that many of us who've been through that are familiar with. They include a desk somewhere at some location, group training, and services that are more or less generic in nature, designed to help an exiting employee leave the organization and in some way, shape, or form find something new for themselves. Let's compare and contrast that with what executives really need. They don't need generic. They don't need a desk somewhere. They need one-to-one attention, because at that level, it's very different. So there are options, but they're not great options. What an executive needs is something that's not cookie cutter. Execunet, of course, provides services that are not cookie cutter. They're tailored to the individual need of a senior level person. They have everything to do with first helping them understand their value story and shape it in a way that reaches the right companies and the right people of those organizations that can make all the difference in their search, and in many instances shorten it dramatically. So that is what is, in my mind, the best opportunity for that exiting executive, as well as for the organization they're leaving behind, because of course that organization has a brand to protect. They want people to know that it was a place that cared about other people, even those who are exiting. If you don't take those steps, you have someone who is influential leaving your company, but feeling not so good about you. That's not someone you want out there telling your story on your behalf, because of course, that's what the brand is. It's a tummy test that people around you can take and say, that's how I feel about that place or that brand. And you want people out there who care about the place, even the one they left behind, because they showed they cared about them. So I encourage companies that don't have outplacement services, for people at that level to consider working with an organization where those people will be taken care of in a very personal way. And most important, be helped to get to their next destination in the shortest time possible.
Thank you for that. So before, you mentioned about companies that have been doing a really good job of weathering this and this change in general. Do you have any specific examples of companies that have done a good job with this change of pivoting, per se?
I won't share specific examples, but I will say that the companies that have walked this very fine line between swift decision-making and respecting culture, those are the ones that have succeeded the best here. So what am I talking about? Let's look at culture in a broad context, Adam. The world we live in, that's a culture. Well, our nature is to congregate, to get together, to shake hands, to not wear masks, to hang out in all kinds of places and be in touch with each other physically. That's our culture. But leadership has needed to make some choices on behalf of culture, on behalf of people, and tell them things like quarantine or stay in place. That's hard. And it's hard for the leaders in place to make those choices, but they were necessary for a greater good. So when we look at that on a micro scale and we look at organizations, I'm saying that there are times when leaders have needed to, with remote work and even distance learning for our children, and make choices that require us to go a certain way that are hard, but they're the right thing to do. I think companies that have struck that balance so that people remain in touch, are able to work together, be effective, be engaged with the work and with each other, while respecting that something larger than us at the moment is in the hands of our leaders to make decisions around. Those are the organizations that I believe have been the best places still to work.
Great. So you mentioned on your LinkedIn profile, I have to say this as someone that came from New Jersey that now lives in Texas, you said you're an avid boot wearer.
Yeah.
Want to expand about that on that? Is that Texas boots?
It's one variety. Motorcycle boots, cowboy boots, any other kind of boot. I like to wear it. Not the pointy ones, though.
Well, Tony, thank you so much for being on our podcast today. If someone is interested in Execunet, how do they find Execunet in general? How do you lead them to that?
Yeah, first, it's a pleasure to be on your podcast, and I look forward to doing that again in the future. So thanks for having me. Execunet can be found at www.execunet.com, and you can find me on LinkedIn, and that's really the best route.
Thank you so much for your insight and your wisdom today, Tony.
Well, you're very kind. Thank you, Adam.